Good morning. Welcome to the Premium Public Video Forecast discussion because it is Friday, July 18th, 2025. And as always, the last day of the work week, we always do a Premium Public Video just to kind of go over some of the factors that are influencing our weather pattern, check out the tropics, and of course, give you a preview of what we do every day in the Premium section. Which, by the way, if you're interested in becoming a Premium member, it's only $15 a month. Or if you would like to just help the channel, please like, share, and subscribe. It actually helps the channel out quite a bit and kind of pushes the algorithm more towards watching these types of channels rather than hype. So let's take a look at the tropics. And I'm sure you remembered, because I'm sure you've seen all the social media posts, especially on TikTok and whatnot, about major hurricanes and tropical storms impacting Louisiana and the Gulf Coast. Well, reality is that we don't have anything. So we were watching a tropical disturbance, and that much is true. And it was festering off of the Florida coast in the north of the Bahamas along a stationary front. Remember, we said at the start of the hurricane season that one of the areas we're going to have to watch out quite a bit is to the north of the Bahamas off the southeast coast and over the northern Gulf, because we're going to have a lot of cold fronts stall out over this region, and you can get tropical low pressure systems to spawn off of that. And that's exactly what we were watching. But this meteorologist and several others were not jumping the gun as to whether or not we were dealing with an organized tropical system. Just something, hey, we need to keep an eye on it. So we did keep an eye on it. And basically, what happens is that the low level circulation with this disturbance decided to take a trek, and let's just say it was very interested in the Gulf Coast itself. And so it decided to remain on the coast rather than over the coastal waters. And so it didn't have a chance to develop. And so now it is basically non existent. The rest of the tropical Atlantic is very, very quiet, which is great news, okay? We have a lot of dry air and shear over the central tropical Atlantic. The intertropical convergence zone, which is right here, is producing a few thunderstorms, but nothing close to any type of organization. No sign of any strong waves coming off the African coast either. The Caribbean is as tranquil as you can possibly have it for July. I mean, if you decide to go on a cruise and you're lucked out, I mean, look at it. There's nothing going on. So no hurricanes, no tropical low pressure systems, not even an area of widespread thunderstorms. You got a few troughs and a few tropical waves that are moving through Cuba, but that's about it. So it is quiet and is expected to remain quiet over the next 7 days. But we are still in the middle of a very active weather pattern for us. Today is going to be actually pretty nice. Let's take a look at some of the observations here. And you can see we have a cold front finally off the coast, a nice northwesterly flow, so it's transporting lower humidity. Temperatures range from the mid to upper 60s over the northern interior, lower to mid 70s in your suburbs, upper 70s to a few lower 80s on the I-95 corridor and in your urban areas, and down towards southern New Jersey, we're in the lower 80s as well. Notice the dew points, though, are in the 50s and 60s. We've been in the 70s for most of this week, and believe me, we felt it. In fact, in some cases, we had dew points touching 80 degrees, a true tropical air mass. But we finally got a cold front to finally move through with a true polar air mass. And so as a result, it's pretty quiet. But as you can see, off to the west, let's get this motivated here and get this moving. Trouble is brewing. Another area low pressure organizing right around Dayton, Ohio, is producing scattered showers and a few embedded weak thunderstorms over the Ohio River Valley. And as you can see, it is gradually heading our way. But for today, on through tomorrow morning, it's actually going to be pretty nice. Very, very comfortable. So what is going on here? Well, first of all, we have the dry air transport driving a much nicer polar air mass. Notice the precipitable water values around 0.5 inches over the Great Lakes. Meanwhile, down towards us, we have a nice little gradient here, but it just feels so much better because we were in this soup down here where the precipitable waters were at 2.1, 2.2 inches, which means there was a lot of moisture in the atmosphere that has been driven out. So this is great news, right? So let's take a look at the upper level winds to see what's driving all of this. So first of all, we start at 250 millibars. And a couple of things I want you to notice here. A nice broad trough over eastern and central Canada. So the eastern two-thirds of Canada features a nice broad trough. This is driven by what we call a negative EPO, where we have a nice trough constantly dominating around the Aleutian Islands. So that's driving our weather pattern. And so as a result, we get this nice ridge as a response over the southeast and the western Atlantic. So at 250 millibars, we have two sources of primary circulation, one over Texas, another one off of right along the mid-Atlantic coast here. And so you get this broad ridge dominating. But let's go down a little bit lower in the atmosphere now. Let's take a look at 500 millibars. And it's a little bit of a different story here. You get a little bit more focus of a western Atlantic ridge here, and you get a ridge extension here, okay? So where are we getting our moisture transported from at 500 millibars? Well, a little bit from the Gulf and a little bit from the plain. So it's not as moisture loaded. It's a little bit drier. So this opens up the potential that if you're able to lift tropical moisture, it will move into a colder environment, which opens up the potential for more downburst wind gusts if you get thunderstorms. But also notice the winds, both at 250 millibars and at 500 millibars, are parallel to our frontal boundaries. Remember, we've been dealing with this cold front boundary kind of stalled out over the region. And notice the winds at both levels are basically moving right along it. Now, we're able to push further south for a short period of time because yesterday the short wave that passed to the north of us drove this cold front through. It gave it a little bit of a shove. Problem is that shove isn't going to last very long. And the predominant feature here at both levels of the atmosphere is this westerly wind. So this means that the cold front isn't going to really move all that much. It's going to drift. And unfortunately, in this case, based on the way the winds are starting to shift more to the west-southwest, here it's going to drift northward, which is setting up our weekend. And then when we get to 850 millibars, this is where things get interesting. Now, again, here's our trough from yesterday. And notice the northwesterly wind pattern here driving the cold front south. But notice we have our western Atlantic ridge clearly very nicely established. And you can see where the primary circulation in the atmosphere that would influence the northern mid-Atlantic is coming right out of the Bahamas and into the Gulf and then up the East Coast. Now, for now, we get this brief period where we get that northwesterly flow driving the dry air in, but that is leaving. And so what's to replace it is another ridge axis here associated with the polar jet stream. And this will combine with this to drive more moisture northward. So that factor here is what is setting up the potential for another round of humid weather. And this isn't going away anytime soon, okay? This type of pattern is back and forth. So we are moving, now that we're past mid-July, we're going to see polar air masses a little bit stronger, getting a little bit, tiny bit stronger, which is typical of this time of year. You're going to see that even more so in August and especially in September. But the overall theme of the weather pattern is not changing at all. And the structure from 250 millibars down to 850 millibars is basically going to remain in place. And this is why I've been concerned in the long range, if we do get a tropical system somewhere in this neck of the woods, the predominant pattern here is to drive any tropical moisture that is sitting here and drive it right up the coast. Which is why I've been telling my premium subscribers, and I'm telling you now, don't panic, don't never panic, but be prepared. So you want to know where to evacuate if there is a tropical system, if you need to, especially if you're on the coast. You want to make sure you have your supplies. And also you need to know if there is flooding, what do you do? Okay, if you're by a river or anything of that nature, where do you go? When do you evacuate? Make sure you have a weather radio, okay? Because weather radios work no matter if a cell tower is down or not. So it'll work in the middle of a storm. I always suggest getting them. I think that's a very important tool. It can save a lot of lives, and they're relatively inexpensive compared to losing your life, right? So the pattern as such again, when we take a look at the water vapor satellite picture, why do we have all this moisture? Well, because of the mid-level wind circulation, 850 millibars, allowing for that moisture to get driven northward and then get diverted. But then at 500 millibars and 250 millibars, your broader circulation still remains from the Gulf through the plains and up into our neck of the woods, right? So that's why you're seeing these different levels in terms of humidity. The upper levels has a lot more moisture in it right now than the lower levels. That won't last long, but that is why you're seeing the moisture in the atmosphere, and that's why on the visible satellite picture you're seeing all these clouds, even though the humidity is much lower. You can even see the differences. Notice the lower clouds are coming in from the northwest, right? But the mid and upper level clouds are coming in from the west southwest. That's the difference in your upper level winds. So that's why you're seeing those different changes. And that's why the stratus clouds look more like a straight line here, right? The alto stratus, because of that influence from the jet stream. Okay, so kind of a nice little breakdown on what's evolving here, but because of the nature of the lifting being pretty weak, we're not seeing a lot of cool cloud tops. Upper level winds through this weekend will remain relatively light, which means anything that does develop in terms of rainfall for this weekend is going to move slowly, which is why I have a little bit of concern of showers and thunderstorms. Not a washout this weekend, but certainly in this type of environment, especially on Sunday morning where you got a little bit more enhancement of the 850 millibar jet, some of those thunderstorms are going to be slow to move, but they're going to be able to tap into some of those mid-level winds and create some downburst wind gusts. Some good news for Sunday evening into Monday and into Tuesday, we get a nice northwesterly flow. So the early part of next week is also looking rather pleasant, very similar to what we're going to be experiencing today. At 500 millibars, the overall theme here is, again, notice all your strong lifting is focused up to our north because that's where the dominant polar jet stream is. But for us, we have to watch out for these little tiny little short waves here that march their way through. The primary lifting parameters that we're going to be looking at for tomorrow's rainfall and also for Sunday, it's pretty much driven by the lower level of frontogenesis and isotropic lifting, first with the warm front and then the cold front coming through on Sunday. So again, not a huge amount of lifting. So this tells me scattered precipitation. Don't go widespread, go scattered. Reduce the percentage chance of precipitation between 40 and 60%, and go with a scattered idea. And then by the time we get to Monday, you get that nice northwesterly flow continuing, nice ridge, and then we'll have to watch out for Friday with another strong cold front. So much of next week looks relatively dry until we get to Friday. Want to show you the precipitable water value. Again, pleasant for now. It rebounds tomorrow. There's that warm front influence. And then again, I'm watching for Sunday morning. Again, not widespread, but notice the enhancement of the precipitable water value. This opens up the potential for showers and thunderstorms, very heavy downpours. And then Sunday afternoon, that starts to fall off with the cold front. And look at the fall of the precipitable water for Monday morning. That's pretty low compared to what we've been dealing with. And that continues on through Tuesday before we see a rebound. And unfortunately, by the end of next week, we're going to be talking about hot and humid conditions because we're not seeing much lifting. So there's going to be a lot of moisture in the atmosphere until we get to Friday. And with precipitable water values around 2 inches on Friday morning, it's setting up to be a very muggy end of next week. That is for sure. I want to jump into the Cape values for tomorrow. Again, not looking all that impressive. So more like isolated thunderstorm for tomorrow afternoon and for tomorrow night. Primary concern will be showers. Sunday afternoon, we got a little bit more enhancement of the Cape, a little bit more potential energy in the atmosphere. So that's going to open up the potential for more thunderstorms. And then it falls off a cliff. Jumping to next Friday, look at that enhancement. Again, this is far out. So again, you don't take this verbatim, but you see what the potential here on Friday, hot and humid air mass is going to be in place out ahead, and you're going to have very high Cape values. So something is going to be brewing for next Friday. So let's dive into this forecast for today. Actually pleasant, pretty nice out there. Lower humidity. High temperatures in the mid to upper 70s over the northern interior, upper 70s to lower 80s along the coast, lower to mid 80s on the I-95 corridor. For tonight into tomorrow morning, look for an increase in cloud cover, but dry conditions for the most part through tomorrow morning. I think that this is a little bit overdone on the European compared to what I'm seeing with some of the mesoscale data. I do like the idea of showers down towards Virginia, though, closer towards the isotropic lifting. So most of the day, most of the morning for tomorrow will feature increasing cloud cover with low temperatures in the lower to mid 60s over the northern interior, mid to upper 60s in your suburbs, and upper 60s to lower 70s in your urban areas. Tomorrow afternoon, the scattered showers and a few embedded thunderstorms will gradually lift northward with the warm front. Again, this does not look like a washout in any way, shape, or form, but definitely keep an eye to the sky. If you hear thunder, head on in. But there's definitely going to be a threat for a few showers, and they will be capable of some moderate downpours. Look for high temperatures in the lower to mid 80s throughout the region. You're also going to have an easterly wind, so you're going to notice a slight increase in the humidity because it's coming off the ocean. But because of that easterly wind, you get a more stable atmospheric environment, which is why we're not looking for a lot of thunderstorms here. And if they do form, they're going to be relatively weak. Now, on Saturday night into Sunday morning, the warm front continues to lift northward, keeping your threat for scattered showers and a few isolated thunderstorms. Low temperatures on Sunday morning will range from the lower to mid 70s, so there's an increase in humidity. On Sunday afternoon, the cold front moves through again with scattered showers and thunderstorms. A few isolated ones could be severe, with the primary focus being downburst wind gusts over 55 miles per hour, maybe a little bit of small hail, and definitely intense downpours and frequent lightning. Look for high temperatures to range from the lower to mid 80s over the northern interior, upper 80s to lower 90s on the I-95 corridor, and mid to upper 80s along the coast. Then the cold front moves through, and on Monday, look for scattered cloud covered tranquil conditions, low temperatures in the upper 50s to lower 60s over the northern interior, lower to mid 60s in your suburbs, mid to upper 60s in your urban areas. High temperatures will rebound into the mid to upper 70s over the northern interior, lower to mid 80s on the I-95 corridor and along the coast. On Tuesday, high pressure is in control with tranquil conditions. Look for low temperatures in the lower to mid 50s over the northern interior, upper 50s to lower 60s in the suburbs, lower to mid 60s in your urban areas and along the immediate coast. High temperatures in the mid to upper 70s over the northern interior, lower to mid 80s on the I-95 corridor, and upper 70s to lower 80s along the coast. So, very pleasant beach days for Monday and Tuesday. Okay, but then Wednesday, well, the humidity starts to increase. High pressure shifts off the coast. We'll notice a steady increase in the humidity because of more southerly winds. Look for low temperatures in the upper 50s to lower 60s over the northern interior, lower to mid 60s in the suburbs, mid to upper 60s in your urban areas. High temperatures will range from the lower to mid 80s over the northern interior, mid to upper 80s on the I-95 corridor, and upper 70s to lower 80s along the immediate coast. On Thursday, the heat and humidity returns. Very much a deep tropical air mass invades, with low temperatures ranging from the upper 60s to lower 70s over the northern interior, lower to mid 70s everywhere else. High temperatures will range from the upper 80s to lower 90s over the northern interior, lower to mid 90s on the I-95 corridor, upper 80s to lower 90s along the coast, and mid to upper 80s on Long Island. The increasing humidity will push your heat index into the upper 90s and a few lower 100s. And then on Friday, ahead of our cold front with the threat for showers and thunderstorms, and a couple of them will be severe, look for low temperatures to range from the lower to mid 70s over the northern interior, mid to upper 70s in your suburbs, upper 70s to lower 80s in your urban areas. So clearly a tropical air mass will be in place. High temperatures will range from the upper 80s to lower 90s over the northern interior, mid to upper 90s on the I-95 corridor, lower to mid 90s along the coast, with the heat index pushing into the hundreds. So out ahead of this cold front, a very hot, humid tropical air mass will be in place. And so that opens up the potential for some thunderstorms that could be rather dynamic that we'll have to keep an eye on. That is your forecast discussion for today. Have a wonderful weekend. And as always, Stay safe out there.